Ever think about like all the stories behind your jewelry?
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, like those heirlooms tucked away in your jewelry box? They could have witnessed history.
Oh, yeah.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into the world of Tudor queens and their dazzling jewels.
Oh.
We're going to uncover how these women use jewels not just for adornment,
Right.
but as tools of power, symbols of status, and expressions of their personal connections.
Yeah.
Pretty cool stuff.
It's fascinating. And, in a time when a queen's role was constantly being redefined,
Yeah,
how they used these tangible objects to navigate the complexities of court life.
absolutely. We're drawing our insights from Dr. Nicola Talis's book, All the Queen's Jewels, 1445 to 1548, Power, Majesty, and Display, and a captivating interview she gave on the Not Just the Tudors podcast.
Mm-hmm.
What's striking is that these queens, both those born English and those who came from foreign lands, understood the power of symbolism.
They did.
Like, let's take Anne of Cleves, Henry VIII's fourth wife. She wasn't English and had to establish herself pretty quickly in a new court.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Tallis found that Anne spent a fortune on jewels,
Really?
almost like she was making a statement.
Oh, wow.
What do you make of that?
Well, it does suggest a deliberate strategy, perhaps even a sense of insecurity.
Right?
She may have felt the need to assert her position,
Yeah.
using jewels as a visible declaration of her status.
It's like saying, look at me, I belong here. Now compare that to Catherine Parr, Henry's sixth wife,
Okay.
English-born,
Yeah.
but from a humbler background.
Mm-hmm.
She was very deliberate in using jewels that emphasize royalty,
Wow.
reinforcing her elevated status.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Exactly. And we see how they use jewels strategically
Yeah.
at various points in their lives for courtship,
Oh, yeah.
marriage, motherhood, even in death.
Wow. It's
Yeah.
like every stage of life had its own jewels.
They did.
Let's talk about the evolution of styles. I was fascinated to learn from Dr. Tallis that those heavy gold collars, so popular in the medieval period,
Oh, yeah.
were out by the Tudor era.
Interesting.
Pendants were in, and initial jewels became quite fashionable.
I like that.
Like one example is that two era Sempre pendant, recently discovered.
Oh, yeah.
It bears Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII's initials intertwined,
Wow.
a tangible reminder of their love and a testament to the craftsmanship of the time.
Isn't that something?
These finds are like little time capsules connecting us directly to the past.
I love that.
Now, one thing I found really intriguing is the difference between the crown jewels and a queen's personal collection.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on that a little?
Yeah, so think of the crown jewels as the property of the monarchy itself,
Okay.
used for coronations and state occasions,
Right.
embodying the institution as a whole.
Uh-huh.
A queen's personal jewels, however, were hers to keep.
Okay.
They were acquired through gifts, inheritance, or purchases, reflecting her individual tastes and relationships.
So even if a marriage ended or, well, something dramatic happened,
Right.
those personal jewels stayed with the queen.
Precisely.
Interesting.
Dr. Tallis uses Catherine Parr as a great example.
Okay.
She had two separate inventories, one for her queenly possessions and one for her personal items,
Wow.
highlighting this distinction.
Okay, now let's talk about hand-me-downs.
Okay.
Apparently, even queens weren't immune to inheriting jewelry.
Yeah, it makes sense when you consider that royal coffers weren't always overflowing, and sometimes a new piece just wasn't feasible.
Right.
Plus, there was a powerful symbolism in reusing a piece that had belonged to a powerful predecessor.
A way to connect themselves to a legacy, perhaps.
Exactly, but it wasn't always about practicality.
Okay.
Dr. Tallis mentions a captivating example with Jane Seymour.
Mm-hmm.
She wore that IHS brooch we discussed,
Right.
the one with the first three letters of Jesus' name in Greek,
Yeah.
but it originally belonged to Catherine of Aragon.
Wow. The woman Henry divorced to marry Jane. That certainly raises some questions about Jane's motives, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, what was she thinking?
Was it a statement about her faith, her admiration for Catherine, or simply practicality?
Right.
We can only speculate, but it highlights the layers of meaning woven into these jewels.
And it seems this wasn't a one-off thing.
Yeah.
Dr. Tallis pointed out that other jewels appear in multiple portraits of different queens.
Really?
That beautiful pendant Jane Seymour wore in her famous bind portrait
Uh-huh.
later shows up in inventories belonging to Catherine Howard and Catherine Parr.
Wow. These pieces were circulating among the queens, each adding their own chapter to the story of the jewel.
Now let's talk coronations.
Okay.
What did Dr. Tallis have to say about the role of the crown jewels in those grand events?
Well, it's important to note that all queens up to Jane Seymour would have worn the crown jewels for their coronations.
Okay.
But things changed after Anne Boleyn.
Mm.
Henry VIII's later wives never had coronation ceremonies.
So 4 uncrowned queens. What was behind that shift?
It was partly due to the decline of crown-wearing ceremonies during Henry VIII's reign.
Interesting.
They were becoming less common, which impacted how later queens presented themselves and their access to those iconic symbols of power.
It's fascinating how Henry's own choices ultimately shaped his queen's access to such powerful symbols.
Absolutely. It shows how intertwined the personal and the political were.
Yeah.
These jewels were never just about aesthetics. They were always reflections of broader trends and power dynamics.
Right.
Now, when we talk about queens in power, we have to consider the distinction between queen's regnant and queen's consort.
Right, because a queen regnant is a ruling monarch, like Mary and Elizabeth I.
Exactly.
While a queen consort is the wife of a king.
Exactly, and their jewel choices reflected this difference.
Okay.
Interestingly, queens regnant often used jewels inherited from their fathers,
Oh, really?
like Henry VIII, rather than their predecessors as queen.
Was that a way to connect themselves to that ultimate symbol of male sovereign power?
Precisely.
No.
Even though they were breaking barriers as female rulers,
Right.
they still had to play the game and use the tools available to them,
Yeah.
perhaps saying, look, I'm powerful just like my father.
It's fascinating how these women navigated the complexities of their roles.
It is.
Now, let's move on to another aspect that reveals a lot about these queens. Their wills and bequests.
Okay.
What can we learn from how they chose to leave their jewels?
Well, it's like a window into their hearts, revealing their priorities and relationships.
Okay.
Take Catherine of Aragon, for example.
Yeah.
She specifically left precious pieces to her daughter, Mary,
Right.
a clear testament to the enduring bond they shared despite the turmoil of her divorce from Henry.
It's as if she was passing on a piece of herself,
Yeah.
her strength and resilience,
Exactly.
to her daughter through those jewels.
That's a beautiful way to put it. In contrast, Anne of Cleves focused on rewarding her loyal servants with rings,
Interesting.
demonstrating the importance of those relationships to her.
Loyalty clearly meant a great deal to her. And then there's Catherine Parr, who left everything to her husband, Thomas Seymour.
Yes.
That was unusual, wasn't it?
Very unusual.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if it was simply love, or perhaps she was unprepared for her sudden death.
Right.
We can only speculate, but it's one of those historical mysteries that keeps us guessing.
It certainly adds another layer of intrigue to her story.
It does.
Now, Dr. Tallis also highlighted gift-giving as like a key aspect of queenship.
Right.
What did she say about the types of gifts that these queens bestowed upon others?
Well, gift-giving was indeed central to their role.
Right.
And what's fascinating is that they often gifted items from their own collections rather than commissioning new pieces.
So a bit like royal regifting. But I imagine receiving a jewel from the queen, even a pre-owned one,
Oh, yeah.
would be considered a huge honor.
Absolutely. It was a sign of special favor,
Yeah.
conveying closeness and trust. Anne Boleyn gifting a belt from her wardrobe to Lord Grey is a prime example.
Okay.
It elevated the significance of the gift beyond its material value.
And Dr. Tallis mentioned that gifting jewels was actually less common than gifting silver or plate.
Right. So receiving a jewel from the Queen was a real mark of distinction,
Yeah.
a sign that you were in her good graces.
It makes you think about, like, all the stories those pieces could tell
Oh, yeah?
if they could talk. Now, to what extent did these queens' jewelry choices influence fashion trends? Did the nobility try to emulate their style?
It's hard to say exactly how far-reaching the influence was,
Right.
but we do see evidence of queenly motifs appearing in other items.
Okay.
Take Catherine of Aragon's pomegranate, for instance. That symbol was found on a silver-gilt sword shape discovered in the Thames.
Oh, wow.
It suggests that those who supported her were eager to display their allegiance through fashion choices.
It's amazing how these little details can, like, open up a whole world of understanding about the past.
It is.
Speaking of details, I was particularly struck by Dr. Tallis's discussion of sapphires.
Okay.
She mentioned they were believed to prevent drunkenness.
Really?
and were often incorporated into men's rings.
Oh, wow.
What's the significance of that?
Well, it's a fantastic example of how jewels were intertwined with cultural and social beliefs.
Yeah.
The use of sapphires in men's rings reflects anxieties about excessive drinking,
Uh-huh.
and the symbolic role jewels played in promoting moral behavior.
Right.
They weren't just about aesthetics, they
No.
carried deeper meanings and expectations.
It's like wearing a little reminder on your finger to behave yourself.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how those beliefs might have shaped people's actions and interactions.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about Queen's consort,
Right?
but how did the use of jewels differ for queens regnant, like Mary Olive and Elizabeth III?
Well, queens regnant, being ruling monarchs, had a different relationship with jewels.
Yeah, okay.
They often used pieces inherited from their fathers,
Okay.
associating themselves with that ultimate symbol of male sovereign power.
Right.
It was a way to legitimize their rule in a system that traditionally favored men.
So even though they were breaking barriers as female rulers,
Yeah.
they still had to navigate those existing power structures.
Exactly. They used the tools available to them, including strategically chosen jewels,
Right.
to solidify their authority and create a visual language of power that resonated with their contemporaries.
It's remarkable how they were able to both challenge and conform to the expectations of their time.
It is.
Now, before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what Dr. Tallis called the individual and collective iconography of these queens.
Yeah.
How did their jewels contribute to their image and legacy?
Dr. Tallis argues that jewels were essential to how they presented themselves,
Okay.
both as individuals and as members of monarchy. Each piece was a carefully chosen element,
Right.
contributing to a larger portrait of queenship. Yeah.
They were crafting their image for their contemporaries and for posterity.
It's as if they were saying, this is who I am, and this is what I represent.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that these were queens consort,
Right.
not ruling monarchs.
Right.
Their jewels helped them shine within the boundaries of their roles, demonstrating their power and influence while acknowledging the ultimate authority of their husbands.
They were masters of walking that delicate line, weren't they?
Indeed. They skillfully used jewels to carve out their own space
Right.
and leave an indelible mark on history.
It's a testament to their intelligence and strategic thinking.
It is.
What a fascinating deep dive this has been.
I agree. It's incredible how these seemingly small, glittering objects can reveal so much about the complexities of power, relationships, and the lives of these remarkable women.
It's a reminder that history isn't just about dates and battles. It's about the people who lived through those times and the choices they made.
And sometimes those choices are reflected in the most unexpected places, like the sparkle of a jewel. Makes you wonder, you know what stories our own jewelry might tell, right?
It does.
Maybe those brooches and rings tucked away in our jewelry boxes are more than just trinkets.
Yeah.
Perhaps they're silent witnesses to history, whispering tales of ambition, love, and resilience.
Absolutely. Each piece holds the potential to connect us to the past, to the lives of those who wore them before us.
Right.
And through these objects, we gain a deeper understanding not only of individual stories, but also of the broader historical context in which they lived.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Tudor queens and their jewels, what's one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember?
I think it's crucial to recognize that these women were far more than just beautiful faces and fancy gowns.
Yeah.
They were savvy strategists,
Right.
navigating a complex world with grace and determination.
Right.
And their jewels offer us a glimpse into that world, a world of intricate symbolism, power plays, and enduring legacies.
Yeah, they certainly weren't just passively accepting their roles.
No.
They were actively shaping them, using every tool at their disposal.
Exactly. And their stories challenge us to look beyond the surface, to consider the deeper meanings and motivations behind the choices people make.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to how they present themselves to the world.
It's a reminder that history is full of these nuanced stories waiting to be uncovered and understood.
It is. So true. So the next time you encounter a dazzling piece of jewelry,
Yeah.
don't just admire its beauty.
Right.
Take a moment to think about the story it might be telling, the history it holds, and the person who wore it with pride and purpose.
And maybe it's time we all take a closer look at those heirlooms in our own jewelry boxes.
Oh, yeah.
You never know what secrets you might uncover,
Right.
what connections to the past you might find.
It's a journey of discovery that can enrich our understanding of both history and ourselves.
Well said. Thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating exploration of Tudor queens and their jewels.
It's been my pleasure. I always enjoy delving into these stories and uncovering the hidden layers of meaning behind seemingly ordinary objects.
And we've certainly enjoyed having you as our expert guide. To our listeners, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to look at history with a fresh perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The past is full of captivating stories waiting to be told,
It is.
and sometimes the most intriguing tales are hidden in plain sight.
Oh, for sure.
And if you're eager for more fascinating explorations of history, science, and culture, be sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive.
Yeah.
We're always here to help you uncover the extraordinary in the everyday.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions,
Yeah.
and keep discovering the wonders that surround you.